Okay, so continuing from the first video, now we look to see how much total cost is. Well, if you go from the quantity of 9 up to the average total cost curve, at 9 units, average total cost looks to be 5. And so the area from 9 by 5 rectangle is the total cost. So you can see that the blue wedge that is above the total cost of yellow rectangle is actually the profit. And that would be $18. And that's how we figure out in each situation what the profit level is and costs and revenues. So if the market demand falls, what would happen if the price is lowered from 7 to 5? Well, the marginal revenue equals marginal cost rule still applies, but now the firm will make an economic loss. So the profit maximizing rule is also the loss minimizing rule. So in this case, what's the amount of output that should be produced? It looks at 7 because marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue at that point. Revenue would be 35. But the costs actually are above the price line. And the costs, you would draw the line right up to the cost curve and then over to the y-axis. And the costs here are 42. And the loss is 7. The shutdown rule. Assume that the market demand falls even more. If the price is lowered from $5 to $4, the firm should stop producing. So the shutdown rule is the following. A firm should continue to produce in the short run as long as the price is above the average variable cost. When the price falls beneath the AVC, then the firm should minimize their losses by shutting down because the firm can't even pay their variable costs of production. So they would save those variable costs if they didn't produce anything. Okay? All right. So shut down, produce 0. So that's so as you can see, we have the AVC curve now drawn, and if the price for this product drops beneath 5 or below, the firm should shut down. So here you can see that costs, if at marginal revenue equals marginal cost, they should produce 5 units, but at 5 units the costs are 35 and the revenue is only 20. So that yellow rectangle is the area of the loss. I'm sorry, I didn't back up on that. That's the fixed costs loss, and the variable cost loss would be that smaller wedge. Okay? Again, profit maximizing rule is MR equals MC, and 3 characteristics. It applies to all market structures. Doesn't matter if it's a monopoly or a perfectly competitive firm. And the rule applies only if price is above AVC. If you cannot cover your variable costs, you should shut down. And in perfectly competitive situation, the rule can be restated as price is equal to marginal cost because marginal revenue equals price for perfectly competitive firms. So here is from the 1995 exam. Please read and try to figure out the answer. Okay, so the answer is E. I hope you got that answer. All right, let's do some practice. Should the firm produce? What output should the firm produce? What's total revenue and total cost, and how much is the profit or loss? So I would say yes, the firm should produce. I know that the output should be 10. That's where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. The total revenue is going to be 14 times 10. And the total cost will be 10 times 10. And the profit is going to be 4 times 10, or 40. What about this firm? Should it produce? Well, let's see. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. I would say yes, it should produce at 6 units because it's covering its variable costs. It's not covering its fixed costs, but its fixed costs it's going to incur whether or not it produces. So in the short run, you would continue to operate at a loss for a short period of time. So 6, total revenue is 6 times 15, which is 90. The total costs are going to be 6 times 20, which is 120. And the profit, actually in this case it's a loss, would be 30. That area there. Make sure that you get comfortable with shading those areas, because sometimes on the exam, on the FRQ, you're asked to shade the relevant areas. What about this firm? So let's go through the curve analysis before we decide whether or not this firm will produce. The optimal level would be 5. So total revenue would be 45, 5 times 9. Total cost would be 5 times 11, 55. And the loss would be 10. But this firm is not going to produce because it's not even covering its variable costs. So the price is beneath the AVC and it would not produce. So it would not produce, and the fixed cost would be $5. Should this firm produce? It looks to me that this firm should produce, because marginal cost equals marginal revenue at an output where ATC is beneath it. So they should produce 10. The total revenue is going to be 100. Total cost looks like it's going to be 60. And so profit is going to be 40. Okay, so here is a question from, I don't know what year this exam question is from. But at a price OA, economic profits are ABKH. So ABKH, because at if the price is A, the a place where A intersects the marginal cost is at H. So it's ABKH. In the short run, the firm will stop production. Remember, they'll stop production when the price falls beneath the average variable cost, and so that would be at OD. All right, I'm going to let you work on this. And you can stop the video. I'm going to advance through. And here's some chart practice. Alright, so assume that the firm can sell each unit at a price of $30. How many units should the firm produce to maximize profit? So what is the total revenue at that quantity? How much is the profit? So notice that at 6 units, the firm is still making profit. It's just not maximizing profit. So the profit will be maximized at 5 units, because total revenue minus total costs will be, for the first unit, it's 30 minus 32, 60 minus 42, 90 minus 47, 120 minus 60, 150 minus 80, and 180 minus 120. So you can see profits are maximized at 5. Remember, marginal cost was 20 at 5 units. Marginal revenue is 30. But to go to the 6th unit is going to cost you more to produce that 6th unit than you get in revenue, so you'll stop at the 5th unit. You can watch Jacob. And here's a 2006 FRQ. I'm going to let you work on this independently. You can stop the video and then advance when you're done to compare your answers to the next slide. Alright, so now I'm going to segue into the short-run supply curve. And the short-run supply curve is something that you need to be able to answer questions about. So remember, the shutdown rule is when price would be anything beneath the AVC. So at that point, that marginal revenue to that at 5 units, that's where the firm would shut down, at a price less than 15. At a price at 20, they would certainly would produce. So as price increases, you recognize that the quantity produced increases. And so the short-run supply curve is the points, all those dotted points above the AVC curve and up to the shutdown point. So that's the supply curve for the firm. So above the AVC, the marginal cost curve above the AVC is a supply curve. That's what it looks like. If variable costs increase, for example, if a per unit tax increases, the marginal cost curve will shift to the left. And the AVC will shift up. So now that short-run supply curve is a little higher than it was before. So when marginal costs increase, for whatever reason, for an increase in input costs or a tax, etc., there's a supply decrease. And when marginal cost increases, supply decreases. So if there's a subsidy, we're going to look at a shift to the right. If input costs go down, a shift to the right. So when marginal cost decreases, the supply increases. What happens to quantity if fixed costs increase? Well, if fixed costs increase, that ATC curve will shift up, but the marginal cost doesn't change because variable cost didn't change.